This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rattle reporting. Good evening. Without warning, there was no advance word at all early today when deadly tornadoes swept through North Carolina's capital city of Raleigh. The twisters were part of a horde of tornadoes that roared through the state and touched on neighboring Virginia. And as police guarded against looting, authorities counted the loss in lives and property. CBS News correspondent Peter Van Sant reports.
Hundreds of North Carolinians, refugees from a series of killer tornadoes, sifted through the wreckage of their lives today, gathering remnants from an early morning storm which claimed at least 4 lives and injured more than 150 others.
We came outside and just saw all these houses were leveled back in the back, and people were screaming, and we were scared to death.
Raleigh took the brunt of the tornado's destructive winds. More than 130 homes were damaged or destroyed as the tornadoes rumbled through town.
Then I heard the train that everybody talks about, and the house exploded.
In Castalia, northwest of Raleigh, 14-year-old Anthony Harris lost both his parents as a tornado destroyed their mobile home.
I couldn't see nothing but the trees, and it was raining real hard, so I just called everybody, and the only person I answered was my sister.
Residents say the tornado struck without warning, trapping some workers in this Kmart store.
I knew I couldn't make it to the back store. I started running, but I knew I wouldn't make it, so I got to the toys and I ducked under, and that's when everything started falling. I'm just lucky to be alive.
Amid the chaos after the storm, there were some emotional family reunions.
I just bought a house. I lost everything. Here's my mom. I know she's freaking out.
Whole neighborhoods turned out to search for victims in the rubble.
Everyone's accounted for.
More than 500 people were left homeless by the storm, forced to spend the day in a shelter, lining up to phone worried relatives.
There's been a tornado. We're all right, but we've been evacuated.
Damage estimates are exceeding $30 million. The state has begun to apply for emergency aid. But for the lucky ones who survived, material losses seem insignificant.
I did real well. I'm standing here now. I think we did all right.
Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Raleigh, North Carolina.
The National Weather Service today forecast extra rain and snow for the Midwest, Appalachia, and the Northwest, helping those areas recover from the summer's drought. The forecast, which covers December through February, said southern edges of the country should continue dry. It also called for a mild winter in the Southwest and Southeast, with parts of the northern plains and upper Midwest probably colder than usual. President-elect George Bush tried today to defrost relations with a man who has the power to make it a long winter for the Bush agenda in Congress, the Republican leader in the U.S. Senate. CBS News National Affairs correspondent Leslie Stahl reports on the effort to end the bad blood between Robert Dole and George Bush.
It could be Mr. Bush's single biggest problem with Congress, not the deficit, not even the Democrats, but getting along with Bob Dole. A president-elect shouldn't have to make peace with the leader of his own party, but that's just what today's lunch was all about.
Now the focus is properly on looking to the future, working with the leadership in the Senate.
I'm proud of the president-elect. We're going to work together. We've got a lot of work to do for America.
George Bush led the fight for the INF Treaty. Bob Dole straddled until the polls told him it was popular.
A new law was campaigning by George Bush.
During the primaries, Dole accused Mr. Bush of lying about him in his ads. And then the name-calling got really nasty. The two men even had a shouting match on the Senate floor. Friends say the feud is rooted in class differences.
He sort of had a charmed life in politics. He's gotten quite a ways without ever really doing very much.
If you don't have your Senate Republican leader totally on your side, committed, strategizing with you, working to the nth degree to get done what you want, you cannot be successful.
After an hour over lunch, the two agreed to cooperate.
You still resent George Bush? Do you think he should leave, that he hasn't had to work?
Earlier, Mr. Bush announced he would keep on President Reagan's spokesman, Marlin Fitzwater, the 6th person he's chosen from Mr. Reagan's 2 terms, despite his promise to bring in fresh faces.
Stay tuned for some of the changes. We'll be getting to them soon.
Mr. Bush hopes to name a defense secretary this week. Pentagon sources say former Senator John Tower will probably get the job by default since no other name has surfaced. Those who oppose Tower say he has fought Pentagon reforms in the past. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, Washington.
And still to come on the CBS Evening News, Frank Courier on an old frontier town that still has true grit. And Charles Osgood on the shows they are calling Tabloid TV. Yassar Arafat today blasted the weekend U.S. denial of a visa to address the United Nations. Giving reporters in Iraq his first public comment, the chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization called the rejection a sheer violation of the 1947 host country agreement. Even America's best friends are urging President Reagan to reconsider. Our coverage starts with Richard Schlesinger at the UN.
The United Nations today was a very lonely place for the U.S. Washington found almost no support for its decision to bar Arafat, charging the PLO has committed terrorist acts.
The United States found that Mr. Arafat is an accessory to such terrorism and accordingly denied the visa.
Even the strongest American allies disagreed with that decision. Nations like France.
We consider that the decision that has been taken is not well-founded.
Spain.
My delegation urges the host country to reconsider its position.
And even Washington's closest friend, Great Britain.
We recognize that the United States has serious concerns in this matter, but we would hope that ways can still be found to allow all parties to a dispute to be heard in the forthcoming debate.
The Arab states, enjoying rare support from most Western democracies, stopped short of asking the General Assembly today to move its debate to Geneva, giving the U.S. time to feel the heat.
We do not want to be the party to say that we are leaping into conclusions if certain friends of ours in the Western Europe and other countries are still trying to reverse the decision.
Late today, a UN committee voted to ask the General Assembly to adopt a resolution urging the U.S. to reverse its decision. Arab states hope that will turn up the heat on the State Department, but they insist they have the votes they need to move the Palestinian debate to Geneva if necessary. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, New York.
The hailstorm of criticism over Arafat's visa is something the administration is determined to ride out, with the State Department insisting that denying the visa sends the right message on the subject of terrorism.
The statement makes clear a broader concern with terrorism, and in this case, as chairman of the PLO, with regard to Mr. Arafat.
Arafat is not accused of personally committing terrorism, but of condoning it as PLO boss when the PLO was targeting and killing Americans. The murder of Leon Klinghoffer in the Achille Lauro hijacking, the 1986 TWA bomb, and last spring's car bombing near the Jerusalem Hotel where Secretary Shultz was staying. But this guilt by association is exactly what has angered America's best Arab allies. They see Arafat locked in an internal struggle against violent PLO radicals and say now is the time to support Arafat, not to penalize him.
That the Chairman Arafat goes to the United Nations is of no harm to the United States at all. I think the United States should have encouraged this.
And what is there to encourage? 2 weeks ago, the PLO's National Council issued a statement that flirted with, but still avoided, the recognition of Israel. Many experts hope that at the UN, Arafat would say flatly whether he would recognize Israel or not.
The real issue here is, has the PLO changed its stripes? And if it has, why not put it to the test and let them do what they say they want to do at the United Nations?
Secretary of State George Shultz may have made his statement on terrorism, but it cost him credibility in the Arab world. Some of Shultz's strongest Arab friends are saying he has also hurt the very peace process Shultz worked hard this year to resurrect. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, the State Department.
After 2 weeks of wrangling and haranguing in Vienna, OPEC finally came up today with a new production and pricing agreement. If the strategy works, analysts say Americans could pay up to 5 cents more a gallon for gas and home heating oil. OPEC decided to cut production by about 20% for the first half of next year and to set a target price of $18 a barrel, well above current prices. A key factor. For the first time in 2 years, Iran is cooperating. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments today in an important case concerning parenthood and adoption and what is in the best interests of a child. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports on the controversy over family ties and binding law in the case of Katie Moses.
They look like the perfect family, Robert and P.J. Moses, their son and daughter. But behind the smiles is worry about whether the U.S. Supreme Court will rule that 7-year-old Katie Moses was adopted in violation of the rights of her natural father.
She's living with us every day and has become our daughter.
Edward McNamara is worried, too, that he may never get to know the child he fathered out of wedlock during a casual affair and learned of only after the child's mother informed him that she'd placed their baby girl up for adoption.
Well, I think it's in her best interest to have the opportunity to be able to know me as her birth father.
McNamara began fighting for Katie shortly after he learned of her existence. But by the time of his first court hearing, she'd been with the Moses family for months, and state court said she'd bonded with them. Still, McNamara continued his legal battle for 7 years, and today his attorney asked the U.S. Supreme Court to rule that California had infringed on McNamara's constitutional rights. The state can deny custody to unmarried mothers only when they're unfit or guilty of neglect or abandonment. But unwed fathers can lose custody whenever the state decides it's in the best interest of the child. The lawyer for San Diego County insisted that mothers do have more rights.
The mother is the one who has the custody. She is the one who carries the child. She is the one who really is left with the practical decision of what is going to be done with the child once it is born.
The case is expected to have broad impact on out-of-wedlock adoptions nationwide.
If a child does have loving parents, either the mother or the father, those rights should be addressed first.
Even if Edward McNamara wins his constitutional point in the U.S. Supreme Court, the final decision on Katie's custody remains with the state of California. And McNamara himself now says he believes it's right for Katie to stay with the Moses family with occasional visits from him. Rita Braver, CBS News at the Supreme Court.
Major banks today raised their prime lending rates 0.5 point to 10.5%. That's the fourth increase this year for the prime, which is the basis for calculating many other loans. The prime is now at its highest level since May 1985. Department today reported this nation's trade deficit narrowed to $28.5 billion in the third quarter. Meantime, the United States and the Soviet Union today capped 8 months of negotiations by concluding a new grain agreement. Those are just two strands in an international economic tapestry that looks brighter to American eyes than it did only months ago. Part of the reason for that is a new understanding by some businesses and some communities of what it takes to compete in today's world. Frank Courier has a case in point.
A century ago, 79 outlaws died with their boots on in Fort Smith, Arkansas, condemned to the gallows by the Honorable Isaac Parker, the hanging judge, who, along with 200 U.S. Marshals, inspired a legend of no-nonsense law and order, and later, an American movie classic.
I mean to kill you in 1 minute, Ned, or see you hanged in Fort Smith at Judge Parker's convenience.
Now, with the same frontier grit that made this Arkansas outpost famous, Fort Smith is fighting back from economic hard times, unemployment, and an exodus of young talent.
We went out to recruit industry. We wanted industry, and industry came. We got more industry than anybody else at our size in the country.
And shovels, too. What's come to be called the city of groundbreakings has attracted more than 200 industries and 25,000 manufacturing jobs. Lured to the Ozarks by cheap utilities, affordable homes, and a largely non-union workforce.
It has been said that Fort Smith is the ideal, the benchmark city against which all other cities should be measured. It's the perfect place to raise a family.
It seems so for thousands of Vietnamese refugees who first landed in America 13 years ago and took up residence at Fort Chaffee, an old reactivated military base adjoining Fort Smith. While businesses, long accustomed to the economic feast or famine from the Army, celebrated, it also convinced town fathers survival hinged on diversity.
The leaders of the community finally decided that we cannot tie our economy to a military base. A group of us went to Washington to see if we could not get Fort Chaffee permanently closed.
Arkansas's opportunities agree with many Asian refugees who stayed and now comprise most of Fort Smith's 7% minority workforce. The newest symbols, say natives, to a work ethic generations old.
Most people had to work, and had to work very hard. It was a sort of hard scrabble living in Arkansas, and always has been.
They're proud of the type of work they put out, their quality work. They're real quality conscious people. You know, what they do on their job, they want to do right.
An enormous variety of industry here has helped ensure against employment slumps. And despite the recent Japanese takeover of home-based Rheem air conditioning, Fort Smith is rising to the challenge from increased foreign competition. Even at the town's biggest employer, Whirlpool, there's an understanding that new layoffs at this refrigerator plant and a shift of 300 jobs to Mexico is the price for continued prosperity.
I think that our folks, by and large, recognize that we're in a global market, and they recognize that we're doing some things here internally that they want to ensure their jobs in the future.
I don't like the idea myself, but, you know, there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
Or is there? With old-style assembly lines on the way out at Fort Smith, industries here host lab classes at the community college, where workers are retrained for the future.
So we're right now in little Fort Smith, Arkansas, facing the thrust of international competition for manufacturing industries, and we're very much involved in that struggle to come out ahead on that. And education is going to be the way to do it, not cheap labor.
And not with lots of people. At the Hiram Walker Liquor Warehouse, this lone worker is assisted by an army of computerized robots that do most of the lifting. The only thing old-fashioned is the ethic.
Our people descended from coal miners. This was coal mining country in the early days. And coal miners are probably the hardest working people in the world. People began to realize that a job was a very important thing, and if you had one, you better take care of it. So we kind of preached among ourselves, let's go early and let's stay late. Let's want industry to want us.
That comeback spirit here helps steer economic destinies, from the shrinking payroll at one old Army post to the fortunes of a new frontier of factory jobs in what some call the hardest working little town in Arkansas. Frank Courier, CBS News, Fort Smith.
Possible new trouble involving the high-tech B-1 bomber. CBS affiliate station WBNS in Columbus, Ohio, quoted quality control inspectors tonight as saying they were pressured to approve substandard parts for the plane manufactured by Rockwell International. This comes as the U.S. Air Force is still investigating the crash of 3 B-1 bombers in the past 14 months. A painting by Pablo Picasso was sold at auction today in London for more than $38 million. That's a record for a 20th century work of art. The painting of 2 circus figures was once confiscated by the Nazis as an example of, quote, decadent art. The previous record, another Picasso. John Carradine, actor and father of actors, is dead at the age of 82. Carradine died yesterday during a visit to Milan, Italy. Debate in show business and in front of television sets across the land, it centers on what's called reality-based programs, not reality, but reality-based, or tabloid TV. Its fans say it opens up the medium. Others say it's time to take out the trash. Charles Osgood explains.
No one's safe from my voodoo, not even you, Phil Donahue.
There might have been a time when the dean of TV's talk show host, Phil Donahue, would have hesitated to get into the ring with a female wrestler. Not anymore. These days, it seems, in the fight for ratings, it's a jungle out there.
Are school lunches killing your kids?
I say, hang the creeps by their nickels.
Well, it's a desperate effort to draw crowds. All of media is tap dancing a mile a minute trying to figure out what will the people watch.
Remember, what you are watching is real.
So-called reality-based programming, tabloid TV, is what's been selling. And since, as Fred Allen once said, imitation is the sincerest form of television, there's now a spate of shows, some with real people yelling at each other, some with real doctors and sick people, some recreating real crimes.
A newborn baby in a hospital nursery.
Or investigating real events.
They have those time-honored themes of outrage and power and greed and lust and violence and everything that we've been reading since Shakespeare.
Tabloid TV doesn't seem so Shakespearean to everybody.
Party time!
It's a cascade of National Enquirer, dirty, lousy public affairs that isn't even journalism.
Some of these news shows started on cable or in syndication, away from network standards and censors. But there's no question they often have done good reports on hot subjects that more conventional television was either too lofty or perhaps too timid to deal with.
There was a time when only the 3 network news divisions could even do reality programming on television, could ever do real life. Real life was a monopoly. That monopoly, thankfully from my point of view, has been broken.
Also broken on television recently was Geraldo's nose. It happened in a brawl on his syndicated talk show, and his ratings were the highest ever.
The best thing I ever did was get my nose broken. You know, I'm surprised I haven't been called by management, asked what body part I can sacrifice next ratings for.
Why not go for ratings, some say? After all, it's only television.
It's only television, but most people watch it 6 hours a day, and some children watch it 8 hours a day. Television will determine what kind of people we are. Only television, my foot.
Television is a business, however, and everybody in it knows that ratings mean money, and money means survival.
You come on the daytime schedule, you compete. You compete with somebody who's dressed like a chicken salad sandwich, making, come on down, winning $10,000, or semi-naked people rolling around to bed on a soap opera.
How often do you have sex? As many times as I can.
As long ago as 1938, when the medium was in its infancy, E.B. White wrote that, quote, with television we shall discover either a new and unbearable disturbance of the general peace or a saving radiance in the sky. We shall stand or fall by television, unquote. What if he was right? Charles Osgood, CBS News, New York.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather, I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
This is CBS.